So, Christian, thank you for joining SSON today.
Pleasure.
Now, just for our audience, can you give us a little bit background of yourself, your role, and what Unilever is working on?
Sure. I work for Unilever, one of the FMCG companies. It's a 51 billion company selling home and personal care foods and refreshment products in the market. I'm 20 years with Unilever. I have a finance background. And in the last couple of years, I'm leading the finance services organization within our global business services organization, which we actually named Enterprise Support. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay, great. And now, what are the major projects that you're working on for Unilever?
Okay. Enterprise Support, which is part of Unilever's structure, providing cross-functional services. We are involved in a couple of transformation programs which are reaching out into the entirety of the business. So not purely within the shared service organization, but also across the functional setup in the entire business. The main drive is really to standardize processes, really to reduce inefficiencies and drive up the value chain. And how we are doing it with joint up programs with the business, and we have received great traction, and we are reducing what we said we would do.
Okay, so then you had a session with us this morning.
I had.
And what were the key takeaways from that session?
Well, first of all, it was a great session to see so many colleagues in the room. So you realize you speak to people which actually know what you're talking about, and they understand instantly the challenges you are facing. So you don't have to waste time on explaining that. So you can really go to the moose of the issues and the challenges and learnings, which is quite a nice thing to do for a change. This morning I was talking basically about our journey in Unilever, about enterprise support, how we moved from a functional setup to a cross-functional setup. How we moved from multiple processes to single processes. How we moved from multiple systems to single systems. So I basically took everybody on a journey to explain to them how we become again this small little company which have everything on their fingertips. Obviously now Unilever is across 190 countries, 51 billion, so it's quite a sizable unit. The takeaways I gave to everybody in the room is, and which were actually learnings for myself, is a couple of them. One is you really have to measure everything. When you try to change processes, establish clear measurement and make them transparent. Don't hide them, share that up front. What has really worked for us well is peer pressure through ranking of each other's. A great success. And whenever you do something, so that's on the measures. But secondly, what else is, we are out there with a strategy to reduce costs, but at the same time we want to improve service. We want to improve the user experience. So, and this seems to be a theme in this conference this time to look into that, which is great. But there's so many projects sometimes or kicking off, which when you really question them, you realize, are they really improving the user? Or is it just improving costs? Or is it just changing from one clunky system to another clunky system? So that's what I really discussed in my session as well. I said, listen, have you really done your homework? Are you really challenging yourself what you're doing? That's another takeaway. And then probably thirdly is about process. Unilever has started to really look into processes with a zero-based approach. What do I mean by that? It's basically taking a blank piece of paper. So if you would start a new business, how would you do that? How would the process look like? You would not organize by function. You would organize by process, and you would not give people name, you are in this process working for supply chain, for finance, for HR, whatever. You would give them, you're part of this process. And so start with the clean piece of the paper, and only once you have sketched out what is your ideal process, then check your limitations by what type of systems do you have at the moment, is it too expensive? A lot of times we start with a narrowed mind. We start to think of, well, I have this SAP thingy and I have this tool, I need to make that work now. This is probably not the right way if you really want to drive standardization long term. So look, zero-based. That's the third takeaway.
Okay, that's very interesting. So in terms of some of the conversations we've had on site, a lot of the attendees have come up with, we are a long-running company. We were created a very long time ago. So much like Unilever, they've expanded on a very simple platform, which then was built upon. And now to go back to a system where everything speaks to each other, they're questioning, how do I know how to invest? I know that's a very broad question, but what advice would you give to someone who kind of had to do that only to now find a single process?
Sure. You should not create a single process if it doesn't have any value for your business. So Unilever is a company which is more than 80 years around. We have grown through a lot of acquisitions, so we inherited a lot of different tools, processes. We are across 190 countries. I'm sure we have multiple of that in terms of processes when we started. But for us, for a business like ours, being fast-moving consumer goods companies, actually there is really an inherent business benefit in driving business excellence, process excellence. Now, that might not fit for all businesses. Some other businesses in other industries might survive and actually are better off not to invest in any form. So, first of all, you should look at what is your business strategy. So, if you have a growth strategy, then you should make sure that, how do I make sure that we have enough funds to fuel this growth strategy? Nothing to do with shared services. But then you should think, okay, this is my business strategy. How is my part of the organization going to support that business strategy? And in my case, I have to ensure that we reduce the cost to fuel also some elements, to monetize some of our assets, to see what we can do to help the organization to win in the market. So, and that's a bit like that. So you have to look at, first of all, where you are standing from, and never lose sight of your strategic objectives. And I think I see too many times that people decide on something because somebody is playing his hobby horse or his favorism, and this is not serving the best for the business.
Got it. Okay. And then there were two other themes that one of them you mentioned, which was the customer experience, and then the other is basically data analytics. So everyone's talking about data analytics, but how many people are actually using it? Is that something that Unilever is working on, or?
Absolutely. So the big theme of cloud or big data is we are right in the middle of that. I mean, for a company again like Unilever, with across so many geographies, so many different consumers. So every day, 2 billion consumers are buying our products. So there's a lot of data points there. So we are not lacking data. But then the old mantra of turning that information is really crucial for us. So what we have done, a couple of steps, is we started first of all to inventorize all our reporting. And that sounds simple, but it's quite critical to step there. How many reports are actually happening? If I started to look into that with my colleagues, that we didn't know. So it took a long time, and within enterprise support, which is the multifunctional setup for Unilever, we really looked into that and started off. So we realized we have more than 12,000 reports running. 12,000 reports times whatever hours you will put in to prepare these reports. It's a huge amount of resources behind it. So now we have created in ES 120 reports to run a business. And now these reports are now being rolled out into the organization. So that's one way of looking into that. The other one is also that we have invested quite a lot into technology, into databases, data warehouses, which really we are start to leveraging now. But we are on a journey here. We have started that. Investments are being made, and we are seeing the benefits coming through. Which is just great, and it really helps Unilever to win in the market.
Okay, great. And then in terms of the metrics, the customer experience. So with 2 million products being sold, how do you go about understanding what the experience is and
Absolutely.
using that data? How are you leveraging it?
Yeah. So there's two things of customers. Of course, enterprise support is a support organization for Unilever, so for Unilever employees.
Yep.
So we have 170,000 employees which are using our services, our tools, internal tools, expense claiming, reporting, and so on. So we obviously realize that if you want to have something which is like an iPad type, you have to invest for that. Do you really want to invest for that, or do you go with different types of tools? And I have to realize our tools are not always ideal, which we have, but they're fit for purpose, and the purpose is for servants. So sometimes you have to take our users, let's say, with us on a journey there as well. But I learned users are fully appreciative if you explain to them why we use certain tools and why the tools have to be used. But we sometimes don't spend enough time to do that. Now, turning to the other side, from users to customers and consumers of Unilever products, then obviously we are helping the relevant functions to be ready that they can interact with a Tesco, with a Carrefour, and so on. And how we do in that, we are providing the reports to some extent to the different functions through the data warehouse. So we are really making sure that the company is fit for win in that space.
If you were to rename what you do, and it was something that Deborah Kops had asked her panel this morning, what would you name? How'd you name it? So
we actually have launched Global Business Services 2 years ago. And at that time, we decided we will not call it Global Business Services. We will not call it Unilever Global Services. We have started to name ourselves Enterprise Support. It's a two-letter abbreviation, ES. It doesn't include the name services in it. It's just support. So Enterprise Support is the name.
Where do you see the future going? So we've talked a lot about so many things already. So where do you think the future would be? For shared services, outsourcing.
I think this is a relatively young industry or type of business, so it's only 15 years, 20 years, depends which Wikipedia page you will open. But it basically demonstrates that everything has changed in the last 15, 20 years. So we should be, first of all, be much more flexible. It's not static, so a location choice is not a final one forever. But so we need to be agile in that sense. So just from a mindset point of view, it's not said and done when you set up a center or you have set up something. Because why is that? The businesses are changing, and we are here to help really the businesses to make the best out of that. This morning, the panelists have made it also very clear. We are here to help the business. There was a colleague from Cargill which made it very clear, and I absolutely I'm in sync with that. We are not here to win awards necessarily, although some people might win an award here in this conference, but we're here for a purpose. So if the business changes, we have to change with the business, and ideally we have prepared for the change in advance. So flexibility, agile, that's it.
Okay. And then so in terms of innovative, that's a word that kind of comes up a lot, but is it kind of getting too overused? So what's one thing that you believe that your team has done that's completely innovative?
First of all, a couple of things actually I'm very proud to say. I mean, one is that we really took a blank piece of paper when we started to look and stuff and did not constrain ourselves because that really opened up the mind. So that's one thing. The other one is we joined up, we really are driving huge transformation programs across the business, which make a business a difference not only within the support organization, but also in the functions. So that's great to see. What I'm getting always nervous is when people talk about innovation and mean tools. It's not about tools. It's not a tool game. There's a lot of providers out there which will try to sell you tools or so on. That's not about. It's about the process underneath you're trying to make changes.
If there was one thing that you wanted to hear more about that you're interested in but is not necessarily out there, so the step after the future, I guess.
Okay.
So something that you're kind of picking up on, but it's not quite a trend, but you see the seedling. Is there anything like that?
I think the next step is really Asia and Latin America are turning much more into a Europe, let's call it, in a way of how countries are interacting, how countries are dealing with each other. Obviously, also see a much bigger political, much more shift into these regions and so on. So I think that will keep us occupied for quite some time there. So that's something for our to-do list. Now, if I look really beyond the horizon, what might come after that, who knows? But I think language is one thing. To make really a big difference, we might want to get away from language dependency in some form. That doesn't mean that we should not provide local service or so on, but how can we avoid that processes require a language dependency in some form? If a smart cookie will develop something on that, there might be a tool out there which might help us, but there might be also other ways to do that. I think that would revolutionize the entire industry.
If you can share what you think about going to these events, what do you like, or the benefits maybe for you?
Okay. I think that it depends on, we always talk in this industry about maturity level, and that we don't mean age of the people or so, but how much knowledge you have in this sense. If you are new into this industry, I think this is a great event that you get to learn what is out here, you learn experiences and so on. If you're a little bit on the journey already and you know something, you will also find something in these events, because it's quite a rich program, a lot of tracks are going around, so you will always find stuff where you can actually get more pointed answers to questions you might ever have. Or you can also contribute, as I did this morning, by sharing my experiences with the colleagues, and I had some great interactions at the end. And afterwards, actually, when there was people coming up sharing some stuff, and that makes it also valuable for me, who has been I'm probably a veteran already in this industry, if I see that compared to the life of this industry. Now, where you guys have to balance it carefully is always to make it not too much of a sales show versus a really interaction of peers. And that's something which I felt you have managed so far on all the events I've attended. But there is a careful line you have always to watch out. But I think so good.